Hi, I'm Ted London, Senior Research Fellow and Director of the Base of the Pyramid Initiative at the William David Institute. I'm here today with Rex Widmer, who's from GE Healthcare. Welcome, Rex.
Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the initiative you've launched within
Sure.
GE?
Yeah. So GE, as you may know, is a $180 billion behemoth, huge company. One of the companies is healthcare, about a $17 billion medical equipment manufacturer. Very broad portfolio. GE Healthcare is very global. Over 60% of our 45,000 employees are outside of the U.S. In fact, our headquarters is based in Europe. And we have very strong presence in both China and India. So small medical devices is an area of growth for our company, and trying to step down from the premium end of the market into the mid-tier and the low end, the value segment, is a general theme across the entire company. About 3 years ago, while I was working for the ultrasound business, given my origin, I was born and raised in the developing world, I've long had a passion for serving the poor. And so trying to figure out a way within a large, powerful company like GE, how can we do something positive for those who are less privileged? We started to take portable ultrasound units into rural areas, partnering with Grameen Kalyan, the medical branch of the Nobel Prize-winning Grameen Bank, everyone knows, and then also Partners in Health in Haiti, led by Paul Farmer. The famous book Mountains Beyond Mountains kind of tells his story. What we found from that research was that ultrasound, when deployed appropriately, can advance access to diagnostics for the poor effectively. And as a result of that, we built up some credible research. And lucky for us, one of the CEOs within GE Healthcare was originally from Bangladesh, a visionary guy named Omar Ishaq. And he wanted to see this thing grow. So a little over a year ago, he set aside a small team, very small team, myself and somebody else, another employee, but gave us the mandate to look across the entire portfolio and assess which technologies could have a place similar to ultrasound in the rural areas of low-income countries, and then begin the learning process of how to serve the BOP. So that's kind of the origin and the story and the context within which we've now launched this program.
So why is GE doing this? What's the longer-term goal for this initiative?
Sure. Well, if you even if you look domestically at the healthcare reform, which is echoing in the chambers of Washington right now, the emphasis on access for those who are uninsured and underserved, the need for a low-cost model, these are themes that are global. I mean, China is struggling with that, with the hundreds of millions of people who don't have access today. And so across the entire company, there's a recognition that there's an unserved populace, and it's a very large untapped market, and that it's also an incubation site for disruptive technology, that if we could really take that platform leap and step beyond our current designs in our technology, that it could open up new healthcare interventions, new business models, new areas of growth for our company. But to be very honest, what I've found, what I'm discovering is that the moral argument for serving the BOP is much stronger, a much stronger impetus for people to get involved, including leadership, than the business rationale. Because when you rack and stack business opportunities, even though the BOP has the billion people, multiple billions of people underserved, it's a long ROI window. You're talking about a decade before you really grow this thing. So naturally, it falls low on the rack and stack of investments. But people more and more want a purpose-driven career and to add value to society. And so I've found that even in the halls of entrenched power in GE, that the moral imperative, the moral argument to serve the BOP is what's most compelling for long-term investment.
And when you talk about the moral argument, I mean, you didn't really frame it as philanthropy. There was value creation for the company, but maybe a different kind of value. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, the 20th century is a graveyard of deficient development paradigms, one of which is aid. You know, the $2.3 trillion of aid spent trying to serve the poor with nothing to show for it. So there's a need for a more inclusive form of capitalism, one where the free markets can empower the poor. Healthcare is a little different. It's much more challenging in healthcare, particularly in rural areas, to truly create a for-profit enterprise that can provide everything across the continuum of care. So in healthcare, at least for GE, what we're trying to do is create technology that can be versatile. And it doesn't matter if it's the Ministry of Health serving the poor or an NGO or an emergency relief organization or a for-profit company. Our technology is ubiquitous, can be used by paraprofessionals like a nurse or a midwife, and create access at, with a very low-cost model. I think that answers your original question.
Yeah, and if you think about it in the company context,
Sure.
even if the ROI doesn't stack up as well as some of the other projects,
Yeah.
are there other returns for the company that they could sort of say, well, this still makes sense for us because we're getting reputation and employee retention?
Absolutely.
Are there things like that? Absolutely.
I mean, firstly, again, we see it as a platform for disruptive technology. Even in niche applications like line placement, where you inject line placement for vein therapy. Ultrasound has a play, but you can only access that area of care if you have a handheld device. And so while you're creating it for primary care where somebody's going home to Hamlet in rural India, it can come back to the U.S. and you could charge 5x to somebody who's in a vein clinic doing something very specialized. So there's we have in GE, we call it reverse innovation, that you do something in low-income countries and you bring it back to high income. We recently did that with a small ECG device designed for rural India. Just got 510(k) clearance from the FDA, I think 6-7 months ago. Slowly picking up pace, but it's got great features. The performance is adequate, and it's for 1/5 the price of the platform we had before. So,
when you think about your rural health initiative,
yeah.
What could success, or what might success look like 5 or even 10 years from now?
Boy, it's so hard to even look that far and be able to gauge. But the way that I would measure it is really whether we've had proven impact for the poor. That's the number one. Because ultimately, even if your intention is to create a market, you can't get there without demonstrating that in the community you have saved lives or aided those who are affected by a disease. The reason being that the WHO, the Ministries of Health, the aid organizations that are fundamental to the somewhat dysfunctional healthcare landscape in low-income countries, they won't promote your technology unless you've proven it. And so I think the measure of success would be that the global public health community is rallying behind the technology intervention, and that we've created something holistic where it's not just the technology, the training component. How do you empower paraprofessionals, the midwives, the nurses, who are retained in those rural areas? Because mostly there are no doctors in those areas. So how do you have the entire model with the proof to advance it? And beyond that, this maybe should be edited out or reviewed with GE Legal before you publish it. But I would say an additional measure of success would be that we've brought on board the competition, that we've created a competitive marketplace, and that it's not just GE playing in these areas. That would be the hope.
So you're running this within a large multinational.
Yeah.
You know, for others interested in doing this, either in a large company or even a smaller one, what advice would you give them? What experience have you learned that you'd like to share with others?
Yeah. Boy, it was a long, circuitous route to get there. I think absolutely persistence, belief that even the moral argument can be accepted. You know, I joined GE in 2000, 9 years ago. I thought I'd be in the company for 3 years. In the third year, I said, look, you know, GE's got water, power, and medical devices. We got to do something. This is a powerful mechanism to serve the poor. It's taken me 5 years to get there. And I bounced around from water to healthcare. And I think one solid piece of advice, practical advice, is that you need to find a visionary leader. And that's what I did with Omar Ishrak, the CEO of healthcare systems. Without his support and long-term thinking, we never would have had this white space created. So that's very fundamental. And I would say, you know, go through your apprenticeship. I've seen people who try to launch straight into BOP work without, you know, completely understanding the fundamentals of business first. And so I worked for 8 years in finance management, in business development, in IT, in Six Sigma, and now I feel I'm actually ready to do it. If I had the opportunity 2 years ago, which I desperately wanted 2 years ago, I probably would be failing more than I am today. So find a visionary leader, stay persistent, and make sure that you have your apprenticeship first, I would say.
Rex, thank you for taking the time to talk today.
All right, you're welcome. Cheers.